This is an ABC News special report.
Good afternoon to all of you. I'm Diane Sawyer here at ABC News headquarters in New York, and we do have the breaking news of a shooting at an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut. And you heard that right. It is unthinkable. An elementary school 45 miles southwest of Hartford. The details are still pouring in. There are 27 victims, 20 children, 7 adults. And we've heard all day about the incredible response by teachers inside the school.
The massacre at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. It was nearly a year ago that America witnessed its deadliest mass shooting.
We turn next here to dramatic new details from the massacre in Las Vegas, an audio recording of a hotel maintenance worker calling for help.
We are coming on the air at this hour with news of a school shooting in South Florida. This took place in Parkland, Florida.
Situation yet again, a school shooting in America in which it would appear at this early juncture that children have yet again been targeted in some capacity by whom we don't know. We don't know if it's an adult or if it's a fellow student, and we don't know the numbers of injured. But clearly it is a very serious situation on the ground there in Metro Miami.
I heard that children were taken out bloody.
I'm very scared, worried about my son, worried about the other kids that I know here.
It was terrifying. I'm still terrified. I think I'm still in shock about it all. I still don't know everything that happened.
A situation that couldn't be any more terrifying. Kids at the mercy of a deranged gunman, and yet it keeps getting worse.
Yeah, these units in the school, I got bodies here.
Today, can you imagine being a parent of a little child who saw this scene that you're looking at right now? Just teams of authorities coming in holding guns. It's the kind of thing that you typically see in a television drama. And now these children will be asking their parents about the reality of what unfolded there at their elementary school today.
Report it. Okay, tell me did you see the shooter inside of the club?
No, but they're talking.
What are they saying? Can you make out the words?
No, they're gonna kill us.
I just spent the last 2 hours putting the burial arrangements for my daughter's funeral, who's 14. President Trump, please do something. Do something. Action! We need it now. These kids need safety now.
Over the last few decades, the United States of America has been plagued by a problem much larger than anything they have dealt with before: deadly mass shootings. Mass shootings in America have become so frequent, many citizens are not even shocked anymore. In the last 56 days, there have been 164 people shot, and 98 of them fatal shootings, according to U.S. mass shooting statistics for 2018. For 2017 alone, there were a total of 1,981 people shot, making about 5 people injured or fatally killed a day. The idea of gun control in America has been a hot topic on everyone's mind, but will the politicians and American people choose to do what's right? Where will we go from here? Will the Second Amendment right to bear arms override our right to live? The Constitution, the law of the land, the downfall of every pro-gun control argument against pro-gun advocates. The Second Amendment of the Constitution reads, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." When the Constitution was written, the average American did not own an assault rifle that could shoot and obliterate an individual's liver in one hit, according to Dr. Ernest E. Moore, a trauma surgeon who reviewed the effects of AR-15s, the gun most often used in mass shootings. Muskets and pistols were the only guns available to people living in colonial America. Muskets and pistols could never do the damage of an AR-15 or any gun of today. The ability for muskets and pistols to wipe out hundreds of people shot is impossible compared to the rounds a 21st century assault rifle can do in a matter of seconds. The right to bear arms has become at a cost to the right of every individual to live and follow the ideals of the First Amendment in pursuing life, liberty, and happiness. Amendments to the Constitution are exactly what they sound like, amendments, the ability to be changed. A document written 229 years ago may not be relevant in some of the same aspects of life that are experienced in the year 2018. The framers of the Constitution could never anticipate the evolution of society to this level of violence and weaponry. It was beyond any assumptions that could have been made. It is not legally decided until 2008 in the landmark case of District of Columbia versus Heller that an individual could rightfully possess a firearm unconnected to the militia for self-defense, which was the initial purpose of the Second Amendment, for guns to be used in connection with the militia. This case's decision was so close, ending 5-4 in the Supreme Court. This case forever changed the way Americans possessed and carried guns and moved further away from the original document's statement. In comparison to the rest of the world, Zachary Elkins with the New York Times states that it is quite unusual for gun rights to be included in a constitution. Only 9 countries in the world have ever included the explicit right to bear arms. Of these countries, Guatemala, Mexico, and the United States are the only ones to have a constitutional right to bear arms, as confirmed by the Constitute Project. When compared to other countries, we are the leading country in violent gun deaths worldwide, as concluded by NPR. To put this statistic into perspective, that is 8 times higher than Canada and 27 times higher than Denmark, all numbers obtained by the University of Washington's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. When there is a clearly drastic difference between the United States and the rest of the world, so much that it reaches numbers as high as 27 times more gun deaths than another country, it can be determined that the problem is the people, the legislation, and the guns.
On February 14th, a gunman armed with a legally purchased semi-automatic rifle murdered 17 people at my high school, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, in Parkland, Florida. We're tired of hearing politicians send their thoughts and prayers to us and doing nothing to make the necessary changes to prevent this tragedy from happening again. School is a place where we should feel safe, and if those elected to represent us won't do what's right to keep us safe, then we're going to be too loud for them to ignore.
The crooked political aspect of money being the defining role in what politicians decide to support or not support is detrimental. In the Senate, the Republicans with A or A- ratings from the NRA drastically outnumber the amount of Democrats with A or A- ratings. In a statistic provided by CNN, it is clear to see that the first 10 out of 71 lawmakers in Florida alone who refused to support gun control laws following the Parkland shooting all have A to A+ ratings from the NRA and are all Republicans. Although not all Republican A+ rating candidates are willing to change, some are. Governor Rick Scott of Florida proposed a plan to put into effect in the state of Florida that had promise and potential, a step desperately needed in the right direction. But unfortunately, just one legislation move can't stop it all. A study conducted by the International Journal of Criminal Justice Sciences concluded that the increasing availability of guns led to more gun violence specifically in the United States. This article explains that by putting control on guns, the deaths by firearms will reduce overall. It is even further explained that on the flip side, that the increase in armed guards or citizens did not, quote-unquote, reduce or stop any of the 73 mass shootings studied. The argument being presented currently about arming teachers or increasing police presence on school campuses would, like any individual might theorize, increase the number of gun incidents rather than decrease. Many NRA-driven politicians have made recent claims wanting to add more guns into the schools that clearly isn't a viable solution. No matter what the statistics say, politicians will always vote in their self-interest. In graphs provided by the U.S. Political Statistics Database, it was clear that after mass shootings, there was a spike in pro-gun House votes, but never again reaching the same support during non-mass shooting years. Overall, no matter the amount of floor votes for gun control, it never quite hits where the law implementation level would need to be. One of the biggest issues in the battle for gun control is the discrepancy between federal and state laws. As of right now, there are not federal laws on gun control that would override all the state laws on either the use or regulation of guns in the country, which leads to every state dealing with this issue in their own way with their own people. In a comparative survey of state firearm laws by Open Society Institute's Center on Crime, it was found that the average score out of 100% for each state on its gun control laws were 9%. 100% means they have strict gun laws. So, every state basically collectively has no gun laws. There are 20 states that scored less than 0 on the scale for gun control laws. Let that sink in. Less than 0. Almost half of the states in America have absolutely no gun control laws whatsoever. On the other hand, only 2 states have strong gun control laws. It should be the other way around. This paper further explains that 32 out of 50 states in America do not require background checks when purchasing a gun. This number only increases when you start to discuss buying guns from a private seller. Only 4 states have laws requiring that guns be locked and stored. 43 states require no license or registration for assault weapons, the weapons most commonly associated with mass shootings. Legislation cannot continue until states recognize the problem and fix their own state's issues before getting the federal government to change policy. It takes state representatives' attention and willingness to create a change, and if that cannot be done, then there is no way they will advocate for stricter federal gun control. When thinking of the people who commit these horrendous crimes on the innocent, we often wonder what goes through their head. Why would they do this? Many politicians feel that mental health has a direct link to mass shootings. I agree that on some level these perpetrators are sick, but statistically speaking, people with mental health issues are typically the victims of violence, not the abusers. The World Health Organization's current opinion in psychology shows that individual factors and situational factors, specifically access to guns, contribute to gun violence. A situational factor determined by the World Health Organization was that the U.S. has a higher rate per capita of gun ownership than any other industrialized country in the world, with more than 300 million guns. Situational factors such as access to guns are the real issue in gun control conversations. There is no generalized mental diagnosis that all mass shooters share. There is only one situational factor, an individual factor that build them into the murderers that they end up being. In a research paper written by Naval Postgraduate School student Peter Stewart, found that the only mental illness that formed a direct connection with gun violence was depression in terms of suicide rates, not mass shootings. Even by limiting the access to guns, the suicide rates would increase dramatically. The argument of mental health or an overlying disorder that drives an individual to kill others is an empty argument. The real issues that can be found as a link are individuals taking their own lives, not other people's lives.
I live very close to Parkland, so it's like an issue that's very near and dear to my heart. I've kept up as much as I can with the protests that have surrounded it. My brothers have protested in response to it, and I'm actually moving closer to that area now, so it's something that I'm unfortunately tragically aware of.
It's actually an event that I'm extremely tied to, unfortunately. I'm from Parkland, so it was, I don't know, we just took a really big hit from it. And yeah, I protested. I know people who were there in the shooting, in the building. It's something that unfortunately I'm very tied to. Yeah.
Well, being from South Florida, having this occur like really close to my hometown, I have kept up with all of the news about the shooting in Parkland, and I knew a lot of the students and actually one of the girls who passed away, and so yeah, I would say that I'm pretty involved. So. I'm gonna say yes, because in the time leading up to this event, there were a lot of warning signs. The press release that first came out from President Trump, he was saying like, see something, say something, you must report. And actually, people did multiple times. The FBI was notified on 2 separate occasions for his social media comments and postings. And the police were also called to his house upwards of 20 times for violent tendencies and just his like pure obsession with guns. and it created a lot of issues for the family that took him in after his mom passed away in October. And so I would say that they should have known that there was something wrong. Yeah.
100%. There's so many factors that go into it. The broadest factor is our secure government system. FBI was the first mishap that happened. Not taking the warning signs and the I don't even know what it's called when they reported him. Not taking it serious enough, not sending it to the Broward, Miami FBI. That was the first thing. The other thing was the campus security itself. Douglas, because it's in such a safe area, there haven't been incidents ever before. It's a fully open campus. You can walk on and not have to go through anything. Sometimes the gates are locked, but other than that, you can just walk on the campus for no reason. So campus security was another issue. Also, the resource officer was another issue. I think politicians who are supported by the NRA are extremely linked to them. Although people do need endorsements and do need money to move forward, your ideology is tied with who you take endorsements from. So if people are willingly, openly, and knowingly taking endorsements from the NRA, then they know that they have to support the NRA's agenda, which means they have to support all Second Amendment rights, giving anybody assault rifles, stuff like that. They knowingly are supporting that. So yes, they're 100% tied to it.
So I definitely do think that there is a correlation between mental illness and gun violence. There is no mentally sound person who would even dream of entering a school and opening fire on, their classmates and teachers. So I definitely do believe that there is some correlation there, but it also has to do with the access and just the lack of mental health screenings when it comes to buying, these weapons of like mass casualty, and it's just it's too easy for them to fall into the hands of the wrong people. So
they're just the steps that could have been taken to secure someone who was clearly not in a state that was conducive to everyone else's health. And it's always very tough because people use it in a way to stigmatize mental health, and people use that as a way to then still not give those people the help that they deserve or the checks that they deserve, while also not trying to limit gun ownership in certain ways. And like people have said, that, common sense gun reform doesn't have to be confiscating all guns. Like that's not. Some people may want more than that, but at the end of the day, like common sense gun control is supposed to be about just limiting the people who have shown signs where you may not be able to adequately use these weapons. The research on domestic violence, like anyone who's been reported for domestic violence, I don't think should have a gun. Anyone who's been reported for certain crimes or that have shown signs like that, I think it's always tough. But I mean, at the end of the day, also like as much as we want it to be better, like there's no perfect solution. We're trying to do what we can because at the end of the day, like while there's no perfect solution, there's definitely like the worst possible case, and that is what happened in this scenario. And so like you just try to eliminate that as much as possible.
So in comparison with other countries, America is exponentially higher in incidences of shootings in general, let alone mass shootings. And I think the difference is in the prevention of these events. You also have to think about the relationship that Americans have with guns is vastly different than other countries. Americans love guns. It's, it's so important to us that it's the Second Amendment versus we didn't even recognize African American people as people worth more than money, many amendments later. And it just shows you how high it is on our list of priorities. I come from a military family, and both of my parents served in the armed forces, and my dad continues to serve in the Navy 30 years later. So we're a very patriotic family, and we believe in the Constitution, and we believe in, America, you know? So I don't believe that the Second Amendment should just be discarded, obviously, but 18th century laws cannot regulate 21st century weapons. And it's just, at that time that was written, something like this just didn't even exist, nor the thought of it or the implications that these weapons could have didn't exist. And I just really believe that there needs to be restrictions. There are no civilian uses for a weapon like an AK.